For centuries, humanity had observed the galaxy from its quiet corner, largely ignored by the sprawling networks of civilizations that saw Earth as primitive and inconsequential, a backwater world barely worth the fuel required to traverse the void to its surface, and the Sol system became the perfect testing ground for alien arrogance, a place where galactic powers could send fleets, probe our defenses, and assume they were engaging nothing more than an unsophisticated species with predictable behavior. Yet beneath the veneer of everyday life, human society had evolved in ways that no alien mind had ever conceived, blending relentless innovation, adaptive thinking, and a willingness to embrace risks that far outstripped the sterile, hierarchical methodologies of interstellar bureaucracies. And so when the first incursion occurred, it was met not with panic but with quiet, calculated observation, the kind of patience honed over millennia of surviving on a planet that refused to yield to any single species' dominance, and the alien scouts, sleek vessels with armor that glimmered with energy-absorbing alloys and weapons that fired concentrated plasma, expected little resistance as they descended into orbit, interpreting the minimal defensive signals as confirmation of their assumptions, unaware that Earth's defenses were not just physical but strategic, cultural, and psychological, an intricate web of predictive modeling, rapid deployment forces, and hidden infrastructure, designed not for the war they anticipated, but for the one that humans themselves would orchestrate, a war shaped by the unpredictable ingenuity of a species underestimated at every turn. And as the first strike was launched against the Martian satellite arrays that humans had long abandoned, the reaction was not a desperate scramble but a precise countermeasure, interceptors and automated drones emerging from hidden orbital hangars. And even before the aliens could comprehend the effectiveness of these actions, humanity's long-range communication systems, encrypted beyond their comprehension, began broadcasting strategic disinformation, feeding false coordinates and simulated fleet movements, creating a sense of chaos where there was none, forcing alien commanders to doubt the very intelligence they had assumed was inferior, while on Earth, civilian engineers and scientists, long used to solving problems under pressure, seamlessly integrated military operations with civilian infrastructure, rerouting power grids, accelerating propulsion research, and implementing planetary shields originally designed for asteroid deflection, turning the planet into a living fortress that moved and adapted in real time. And the alien fleet, which had arrogantly presumed victory, began to realize that every maneuver they attempted was anticipated, countered, and exploited, leading to confusion, hesitation, and internal discord. And as days turned into weeks, the humans did not simply defend. They expanded their reach, employing stealth carriers that appeared where they were least expected, deploying AI-controlled drones capable of autonomous tactics that mirrored human intuition, and even engaging in acts of diplomacy with minor alien factions who had themselves been marginalized by the dominant powers, creating a web of alliances that further destabilized the invaders' plans. And while the alien command structures struggled with conflicting reports and unprecedented resistance, the human response escalated not through brute force alone but through psychological mastery, using alien assumptions about human behavior against them, exploiting predictable protocols, and turning hesitation into catastrophe. And it was during the first major engagement near the edge of the Alpha Centauri system that the reality of humanity's hidden capabilities became undeniable, as waves of coordinated attack struck with precision, crippling supply lines, severing communications, and forcing the alien leaders to acknowledge that the species they had thought they controlled, that they had dismissed as simple and primitive, was not only surviving but dominating the engagement through a combination of intellect, adaptability, and relentless willpower. And as reports of victories and countermeasures reached the broader Galactic Council, disbelief and fear began to ripple across civilizations that had long treated humans as inconsequential, while on Earth, Leadership Council composed of civilians, military strategists, scientists, and diplomats worked in concert to prepare for the inevitable escalations, aware that the galaxy would now view humanity not as a curiosity but as a force capable of redefining the balance of power. And in private, the commanders who had once assumed easy victories against Earth now studied human behavior with a mix of respect and dread, realizing that every calculation they had made was flawed, every assumption overturned, and the species they thought they could control was orchestrating a symphony of strategy, resilience, and innovation that no alien technology, no matter how advanced, had ever encountered. and as humanity's influence quietly expanded through defensive and offensive measures alike, there emerged a pattern of calculated restraint, where destruction was meted out not indiscriminately but with purpose, targeting only what was necessary to secure survival and advantage, demonstrating a discipline that alien observers found both baffling and terrifying, and with each passing operation, each coordinated strike, each successful manipulation of alien overconfidence, the truth became undeniable across the galaxy. Underestimating humanity had been the gravest mistake ever committed, and the consequences of that miscalculation would echo across star systems for decades, as the species that had been dismissed as inconsequential revealed itself to be not only resilient but decisive, not only adaptive but overwhelmingly capable, and in the shadows of human ingenuity, the very foundations of galactic power structures trembled, for the one constant that humanity had mastered across its long, turbulent history was the ability to turn adversity into advantage, weakness into strategy, and skepticism into victory. And so while alien fleets regrouped, recalculated, and feared the unknown capabilities of their underestimated opponent, humanity did not rest, did not falter, and did not show the full extent of its potential, leaving the galaxy to slowly awaken to a truth that could not be ignored. The species they believed they could control was not only free but rising, and the story of that rise had only just begun. A quiet yet unstoppable force that would reshape interstellar relations, challenge assumptions, and remind every civilization that had ever doubted Earth that some mistakes are too costly to survive. As the alien fleets retreated to regroup and assess the staggering losses inflicted by a species they had long dismissed, humanity's response was far from reactive. It was proactive, a deliberate escalation of strategy designed to redefine every interaction in the galaxy and to ensure that no miscalculation could ever again threaten the Sol system or its allies. And from the command centers hidden beneath the Rockies to orbital stations camouflaged against all known detection methods, human strategists coordinated a multi-layered approach that combined direct military engagement, cyber warfare, and psychological manipulation, exploiting the arrogance and rigidity of alien command protocols. And as human scientists deployed experimental energy weapons and propulsion systems that exceeded even the most advanced alien projections, engineers and programmers simultaneously adapted captured alien technology, integrating it into human designs in ways that alien observers could not anticipate, creating unpredictable patterns of movement and attack. And even as minor skirmishes erupted near the outer colonies, the broader human objective remained clear: not indiscriminate conquest, but the assertion of capability, the demonstration that humanity could not be bullied or ignored. And in this period of escalation, intelligence operatives infiltrated communications networks, revealing that alien assumptions about human behavior were not only flawed but dangerously so. And when those intercepted communications were subtly fed back into alien decision-making channels, the resulting confusion created opportunities for further precision strikes, each action calculated to inflict maximum strategic disruption while minimizing unnecessary conflict. And on Earth, leaders convened emergency councils not from fear, but from a measured understanding of the broader implications of galactic attention, determining where restraint could be applied and where decisive force was required. The balance between diplomacy and power constantly assessed against the backdrop of an increasingly unsettled galaxy, and while alien commanders debated strategy, uncertain of which actions would yield success or disaster, human fleets moved with coordinated precision, using wormhole relays and stealth craft to deploy forces at unexpected locations, often appearing simultaneously in multiple systems, creating the illusion of omnipresence that further eroded enemy confidence. And the psychological impact on the invaders were profound, with junior officers questioning orders, entire squadrons hesitating to act, and internal rivalries emerging as blame and suspicion multiplied within alien hierarchies, all while humanity's true capabilities remained largely unseen, intentionally held in reserve, as the humans understood that the revelation of power, when controlled, had as much impact as its actual application, and as reports of human ingenuity, bravery, and strategic brilliance reached galactic councils and neutral civilizations, whispers of caution spread, caution tinged with fear, as no species had ever demonstrated such a combination of adaptability, restraint, and relentless effectiveness, and the ripple effects extended beyond immediate conflict, as previously neutral factions sought to establish alliances or at least neutrality with Earth, recognizing that the species that had survived centuries of internal struggle, planetary catastrophes, And existential threats could not be underestimated, and as humans engage in selective protective operations, rescuing colonies, defending vulnerable systems, and dismantling dangerous technologies in controlled strikes, the pattern became clear. Humanity was not motivated by conquest or domination, but by principle, protection, and the assertion that no civilization, regardless of size or power, could presume dominance over them, and these actions reshape perceptions of morality, strategy, and power across interstellar politics, forcing alien empires to reconsider centuries of assumptions, protocols, and engagement rules, while back on Earth, public awareness of the conflict was tightly controlled, presenting humanity as both capable and measured, inspiring unity and cooperation rather than fear or chaos, and this balance of transparency and secrecy, of visible action and hidden capability, created an environment in which the humans could dictate the pace and nature of escalation, forcing alien powers to respond to conditions of their own making, conditions set not by brute force alone but by an intricate understanding of psychology, probability, and human ingenuity. And as weeks turned into months, the alien leadership began to experience a crisis of confidence unprecedented in their history, witnessing firsthand that every assumption about humanity had been catastrophically flawed, that the species they believed they could manipulate and control had evolved beyond predictability, and that the combination of resilience, creativity, and strategic foresight that defined human behavior created a dynamic that no rigid command structure could contain. And in response, humans did not merely defend. They established controlled demonstrations of force, showcasing technological breakthroughs, rapid fleet deployments, and precise tactical maneuvers that simultaneously protected allies and destabilized enemy projections, creating a narrative in which humanity was always several steps ahead, not through arrogance, but through preparation, adaptability, and the cumulative experience of a species long accustomed to surviving against the odds. And as alien fleets faced repeated failures, delayed operations, and compromised communications, entire councils were forced into emergency deliberations, debates that revealed the stark reality. Humanity was no longer a minor curiosity, a planet to be monitored or dismissed, but a central actor whose capabilities, if fully unleashed, could restructure the balance of power across the galaxy. And as humans quietly continue their coordinated strategies, employing both defensive and offensive measures, the overarching lesson became unavoidable for all who observed. The species that had been written off, controlled, and underestimated was now defining the rules of engagement, asserting dominance not through blind aggression but through precise, disciplined, and relentless application of intellect, coordination, and determination. And as the first phase of strategic escalation concluded with human forces maintaining complete initiative across contested systems, the aliens had no choice but to recognize an uncomfortable truth. Control had been an illusion, underestimation a fatal error, and the species they had thought manageable was actively reshaping the galaxy in ways that no technology, doctrine, or calculation had anticipated. And in the quiet moments between operations, human leaders considered the next steps, knowing that the galaxy now watched, and that the full measure of humanity's ingenuity and resolve would have to be revealed in ways that secured survival, protected allies, and ensured that no species, no matter how powerful, would ever again make the mistake of assuming dominion over Earth. By the time the alien coalition fully comprehended the scope of their miscalculation, humanity had already transitioned from reactive defense to proactive strategy, leveraging every advantage it possessed to systematically reshape the theater of conflict across multiple star systems simultaneously. And as fleets of human ships, constructed from both Earth-origin designs and reverse-engineered alien technology, moved with unprecedented coordination, alien commanders found themselves grappling with the unsettling reality that human tactics were not only unpredictable but designed to exploit their most rigid doctrines, and from deep space observation platforms to orbital command hubs orbiting distant colonies, humans monitored the chaos with precision, analyzing enemy movements, predicting counteractions, and deploying interventions that created cascading failures within enemy supply chains, communication networks, and morale. While on Earth, scientists accelerated experimental propulsion and energy systems, pushing theoretical concepts into operational reality at a pace that left even human engineers breathless. And the integration of artificial intelligence, capable of adaptive learning and strategic simulation beyond any alien framework, allowed humanity to anticipate entire campaigns before their opponents could finalize plans, creating an impression of omniscience that demoralized and confused enemy officers, and even as humanity expanded its operational footprint across contested regions, they continued to exercise calculated restraint, selectively neutralizing threats while leaving non-aggressive or neutral civilizations untouched, demonstrating a level of discipline and ethical consideration that contrasted starkly with the alien assumption that humans would act with uncontrolled aggression. And this mixture of unpredictability and morality created strategic and psychological pressure that destabilized the coalition, fostering internal dissent, distrust, and increasingly desperate attempts to regain control, which in turn played directly into human planning, as missteps caused by alien overconfidence were magnified into operational opportunities, and as humans began establishing forward operating bases in previously hostile sectors, their presence was often accompanied by discrete humanitarian and scientific missions, rescuing enslaved populations, restoring damaged habitats, and establishing communications networks that offered both safety and leverage, all while reinforcing the narrative that humanity's capability was coupled with a sense of responsibility, creating a reputation that spread across the galaxy, one that encouraged both fear and respect. And as alien fleets confronted coordinated attacks that combined high-speed strikes, stealth maneuvers, and long-range energy bombardments, their losses mounted in ways previously unimaginable, and reports of entire task forces being neutralized before completing even minor objectives reached homeworld councils, sowing panic and doubt in corridors that had never known defeat. And while the aliens struggled to reorganize, humans exploited their indecision, deploying ambushes at critical logistical nodes, severing command links, and capturing technology that was then analyzed and integrated into human systems, further amplifying their advantage. And as this cycle of strategic superiority repeated across sectors, the galaxy began to notice patterns of human efficiency, ingenuity, and adaptability that no other species exhibited, and whispers of what traveled faster than fleets, reaching distant colonies and independent civilizations who had assumed alien dominance was absolute, prompting some to quietly align themselves with humanity or reconsider prior allegiances, all of which increased human influence without a single unnecessary confrontation. And even as these alliances formed, human operatives maintained strict operational security, ensuring that neither strategy nor true capability was fully revealed, maintaining an element of surprise that alien leadership could not calculate or counter. And on Earth, leadership councils deliberated long-term strategy, balancing expansion of influence, defense of the Sol system, protection of human and allied populations, and measured displays of power, understanding that patience and control were as vital as technological superiority. And as alien forces continued to misinterpret human behavior, attributing every action to reckless aggression or random chance, they failed to see the underlying pattern of deliberate, adaptive, and relentless strategy, which meant that every countermeasure they attempted only played into humanity's hands. And as the conflict evolved, humans began subtle outreach to minor alien factions previously subjugated or overlooked, establishing channels of communication, trade, and shared defense, creating a decentralized support network that further destabilized the coalition's unity and forced them to contend not only with human military power but with diplomatic, economic, and cultural influence, all executed with the same precision and foresight that characterized every other aspect of humanity's approach. And as months passed, reports of alien commanders being replaced due to repeated failures, entire bureaucracies restructured in desperation, and factional rebellions emerging within the coalition reached Earth. Intelligence networks, confirming that the strategy was working beyond expectation, while humans quietly continued to expand and reinforce critical systems, ensuring that the eventual revelation of full capability will be both undeniable and strategically overwhelming. And through it all, Earth remained the epicenter of coordination, research, and command, a planet whose inhabitants had learned over millennia to adapt, survive, and innovate under pressure, a species that turned adversity into opportunity, risk into precision, and underestimation into decisive advantage. And as the alien coalition faced repeated, unpredictable setbacks, their perception of humanity shifted from curiosity to existential threat, and the message became unavoidable. The species they had presumed controllable, dismissible. or inferior was not only capable of defending itself, but had matured into a force that could dictate the tempo, scope, and outcome of interstellar engagement, and every misstep they made only further validated this reality, demonstrating that the arrogance and assumptions of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations had been catastrophically misplaced, and that humanity, restrained but resolute, patient yet relentless, was fully prepared to define the rules of survival, power, and influence in a galaxy that had never before witnessed the emergence of a species capable of so many simultaneous, calculated, and decisive actions, and as human fleets continued to execute operations that combined offensive precision, defensive mastery, and strategic foresight, the alien coalition realized with growing dread that the planet they had thought could be contained was orchestrating a campaign that would leave its mark across systems, civilizations, and history itself, and there was no longer any doubt. Underestimating humanity had been an irreversible mistake, one whose consequences were only beginning to unfold, and the galaxy would never again view Earth as inconsequential. As humanity's influence spread across contested sectors, the alien coalition struggled to adapt to a reality they had neither predicted nor trained for, with every tactical decision seemingly counted before it could be executed. And yet humans did not rely solely on superior technology or brute force, instead applying a level of strategic foresight, adaptability, and psychological insight that rendered traditional measures of power irrelevant. And from the orbital command centers orbiting Europa to hidden deep space outposts near binary star systems, human leaders coordinated simultaneous strikes, counter-deceptions, and diplomatic engagements, carefully balancing aggression with restraint, ensuring that every move advanced both immediate objectives and long-term influence. And while alien fleets scrambled to defend supply lines, maintain communications, and enforce territorial claims, humans quietly conducted targeted interventions that reshaped local power structures, liberating oppressed colonies, restoring critical infrastructure, and integrating former adversaries into a network of support that amplified human capacity far beyond the limitations of their fleets alone. And as alien officers faced repeated operational failures, entire command hierarchies began to fracture under the weight of uncertainty, rival factions blaming each other for miscalculations, while humans exploited these fractures with precise maneuvers designed to further destabilize cohesion. And on Earth, civilian and military councils worked seamlessly to anticipate the next wave of escalation, using predictive modeling, advanced simulations, and deep space reconnaissance to plan multi-sector campaigns that combine human intuition with artificial intelligence processing, creating a decision-making speed and accuracy that alien minds could not replicate. And as human fleets executed coordinated assaults across multiple star systems, minor alien factions, previously neutral or subjugated, began to openly ally with humanity, recognizing that the species once dismissed as primitive was now an unstoppable force, capable of reshaping entire regions without ever revealing the full extent of their power. And within alien command centers, whispers of doubt turned to panic as intelligence reports indicated that humans were not only countering each action but actively manipulating enemy assumptions, exploiting every expectation, and creating outcomes that no alien doctrine had ever predicted. And this awareness was compounded by humanity's integration of captured technology, which allowed them to anticipate enemy maneuvers, deploy countermeasures, and create strategic ambiguity that left alien commanders second-guessing their every decision. And as the conflict escalated, human fleets demonstrated an unprecedented combination of precision, adaptability, and resourcefulness, striking at critical nodes with surgical efficiency while maintaining defensive perimeters around key systems and populations, ensuring that every action contributed to both tactical success and strategic advantage. And the psychological impact on alien forces was profound, with entire squadrons hesitating, commanders reconsidering orders, and subordinate units acting cautiously, uncertain of the consequences of even minor engagements. And this pattern extended beyond immediate military conflict, as humans conducted selective displays of technological and strategic capability, revealing enough to inspire caution and respect, but withholding the full measure of their strength to maintain an element of surprise. And as months passed, the cumulative effect of these operations began to reshape the geopolitical and interstellar landscape, with independent civilizations and previously neutral factions realigning their policies, trade, and allegiances in anticipation of humanity's influence, recognizing that cooperation, or at least neutrality with Earth, was now essential for survival. And while these developments unfolded, humans continued to expand their strategic infrastructure, establishing hidden bases, secure supply networks, and rapid deployment facilities, ensuring that even in the event of unforeseen attacks, response times remained instantaneous and operational flexibility unmatched. And as alien commanders attempted to regroup, they found their strategies undermined not only by human capability, but by the unpredictability of human decision-making, which blended creativity, intuition, and disciplined calculation in ways that alien military doctrine could neither anticipate nor counter. And from the perspective of neutral observers, humanity's actions appeared almost prescient, with operations executed simultaneously across sectors, allies protected, enemies neutralized, and influence expanded without the need for reckless engagement. And even as alien forces adapted, human planners continuously adjusted, predicting counters, deploying decoys, and creating outcomes that maximize both advantage and narrative impact, further reinforcing the perception of an unstoppable force. And within the highest councils of alien powers, discussions became increasingly frantic, with leaders forced to confront the realization that centuries of assumptions, underestimations, and arrogance had led to a strategic nightmare, as the species they had thought controllable was now dictating terms across multiple star systems, reshaping alliances, neutralizing threats, and demonstrating a combination of restraint, decisiveness, and ingenuity that left no doubt about their capability. And through it all, humanity maintained an underlying principle that power without purpose or victory without foresight could be wasted. And so every operation, every diplomatic outreach, and every technological deployment was executed with deliberate intention, ensuring that humans not only survived but thrived, expanding influence and securing the galaxy's recognition of their strength. And as alien fleets faced repeated failures, unexpected alliances formed against them, and internal divisions deepened, humanity quietly reinforced critical sectors, prepared contingency plans, and continued to integrate lessons learned into an evolving doctrine of dominance tempered by ethics, foresight, and strategic patience, creating a level of adaptability and control that left alien forces struggling to comprehend a species that had mastered the art of turning adversity into opportunity, underestimation into advantage, and threat into triumph. And as a narrative of human ingenuity, resilience, and decisive action spread across the galaxy, one thing became clear to all observers. The species that had once been dismissed, ignored, and underestimated was now a central actor in the unfolding galactic order, capable of dictating outcomes, shaping alliances, and demonstrating that control, once assumed by others, was an illusion, and that the species they had presumed weak, simple, and manageable had become a force whose impact would echo across the stars for generations. As human influence expanded across multiple star systems, the alien coalition's panic deepened, their once unassailable confidence now replaced by confusion, mistrust, and the slow-burning fear that every assumption about humanity had been catastrophically wrong. And yet humans did not exploit this panic recklessly. Instead, they applied a level of strategic patience that combined decisive action with calculated restraint, ensuring that every operation served a broader purpose of securing survival, expanding influence, and reshaping the interstellar perception of what a single species could achieve. And from hidden orbital stations to deep space command centers, humans coordinated simultaneous operations that combined offensive strikes, defensive reinforcement, and long-term infrastructure development, creating a network of capability so extensive and resilient that alien commanders found it impossible to predict, counter, or fully comprehend. And the psychological impact on alien forces was profound, with entire fleets hesitating, task forces retreating without engagement, and command hierarchies breaking down under the weight of repeated, unpredictable setbacks, while human planners monitored these responses, adjusting strategies in real time, feeding on confusion they had deliberately cultivated. And as humans executed targeted strikes against critical supply lines, communications hubs, and forward bases, they did so with surgical precision, neutralizing threats without unnecessary destruction, protecting civilian populations, and demonstrating a level of ethical discipline that confounded alien expectations. And the integration of advanced artificial intelligence with human intuition allowed for simultaneous engagement on multiple fronts, creating a sense of omnipresence, a psychological pressure that caused alien leaders to question every decision, every protocol, and every assumption, and even as minor alien factions attempted to exploit perceived weaknesses in human strategy, they found themselves outmaneuvered, integrated into human-led operations, or persuaded to ally with Earth through a combination of diplomacy, trust-building, and demonstration of capability. And as months of coordinated operations progressed, humanity revealed the full scope of its capacity for innovation, adaptability, and foresight, deploying energy weapons capable of altering orbital dynamics, propulsion systems that exceeded previous theoretical limits, and stealth technologies that rendered traditional detection methods obsolete, while simultaneously maintaining secure supply chains, rapid response facilities, and infrastructure resilience that ensured uninterrupted operational tempo even in contested sectors. And as alien forces struggled to comprehend these developments, minor skirmishes escalated into decisive engagements, each one reinforcing humanity's reputation for tactical brilliance, ethical restraint, and strategic patience. And reports of these victories spread quickly through neutral civilizations, reshaping interstellar alliances, trade agreements, and political calculations, as species that had once considered Earth irrelevant now recognized the planet as a central pivot of power, influence, and stability. And while humans projected strength outwardly, internally, councils on Earth coordinated research, diplomacy, and operational oversight with meticulous attention, ensuring that every action aligned with long-term objectives and that no opportunity for advantage was missed. And as alien fleets regrouped to form new strategies, they discovered that humanity had already anticipated multiple potential responses, countering them with maneuvers that appeared almost prescient, a combination of probability analysis, predictive simulation, and intuitive decision-making honed through centuries of survival on a planet that rewarded adaptability, creativity, and resilience. And as these patterns of success repeated across systems, the alien coalition faced a crisis of legitimacy, their ability to command, coordinate, and control steadily eroding under the relentless pressure of human ingenuity, while human fleets continued to advance in ways that balance offensive dominance with strategic protection, selectively targeting threats, rescuing oppressed populations, and securing critical systems to create a network of influence and security that left no sector immune to human presence or oversight. And through it all, humanity maintained a principle of controlled escalation, revealing just enough capability to command respect and induce caution, but withholding full power to preserve the element of surprise. And as weeks turned into months, alien leaders were forced to confront an inescapable truth. The species they had dismissed, underestimated, and presumed controllable was now orchestrating operations across multiple sectors with unmatched precision, foresight, and discipline. And the consequences of their arrogance became increasingly evident as their fleet suffered repeated failures, internal divisions multiplied, and minor factions realigned with humanity, expanding influence without requiring reckless aggression. And in the quiet corridors of Earth's command centers, human leaders understood that this was only the beginning, that the galaxy was awakening to a reality in which Earth would dictate the tempo of interstellar affairs, that restraint and calculated power could achieve results that brute force alone never could, and that the narrative of humanity's emergence as a decisive force would echo through generations, reshaping alliances, doctrines, and the fundamental perception of what a single species could achieve. And as alien fleets faced the unrelenting combination of tactical superiority, strategic patience, and ethical discipline that defined human operations, it became unavoidable that they acknowledge an inconvenient fact. The species they thought they could control, manipulate, or suppress was not only free, but orchestrating a level of influence and dominance that no civilization had ever anticipated. And as this realization spread, the galaxy trembled not only at humanity's capabilities, but at the inevitability that the species which had once been underestimated would now define the terms of engagement, power, and survival for all who shared the stars. As human operations continued to unfold across the galaxy, it became increasingly apparent to every observing civilization that the species they had once dismissed as primitive had not only survived the initial trials, but had adapted and evolved beyond the expectations of even the most advanced alien minds. And while alien command centers scrambled to coordinate responses, human fleets operated with a precision and foresight that turned every engagement into an opportunity, exploiting enemy assumptions, manipulating their perceptions, and neutralizing threats with surgical efficiency. And on Earth, civilian, scientific, and military council collaborated seamlessly, integrating intelligence, research, and tactical operations into a single cohesive framework that allowed for rapid decision-making, adaptive planning, and simultaneous multi-sector engagement. While alien leadership struggled with fragmented communications, delayed reconnaissance, and a growing sense of panic as every plan they attempted was anticipated, countered, or rendered irrelevant by human ingenuity, and through it all, humans demonstrated a mastery of psychological warfare that complemented their technological and strategic superiority, creating uncertainty, doubt, and fear among alien forces, while maintaining consistent narrative of ethical restraint, measured retaliation, and selective intervention that further confounded their adversaries, and as minor factions previously dominated all. Overlook began to openly ally with humanity, the network of influence expanded exponentially, creating a decentralized yet coordinated system of support that magnified human operational reach and reinforced perception of omnipresence. And as fleets engaged in successive battles across contested regions, alien commanders experienced repeated failure. Witnessing task forces neutralized with minimal human loss, supply chains severed, and critical infrastructure secured under conditions that defied their understanding of probability and strategic logic, and these failures forced the alien coalition into reactive mode, constantly attempting to regain control, reassert dominance, and correct miscalculations that were no longer errors but structural weaknesses exposed by human precision and foresight. And while humans continued to adapt and evolve their strategies, they also deployed measures that stabilized vulnerable systems, protected civilian populations, and ensured that every action advanced not only immediate objectives but long-term influence, creating a balance of power that reinforced both deterrence and legitimacy. And as weeks passed, intelligence gathered from captured alien communications, intercepted directives, and real-time observations allowed human planners to continuously refine tactics, anticipate enemy movements, and deploy countermeasures that neutralized potential threats before they could manifest, creating a feedback loop in which alien uncertainty became a predictable advantage. And as humans gradually revealed advanced capabilities, stealth propulsion systems, adaptive energy weapons, and AI-driven predictive combat protocols, the psychological impact on alien forces intensified, undermining confidence, morale, and the cohesion of previously rigid command hierarchies, while human leadership remained focused on the strategic objective, establishing an enduring position of influence, safeguarding allied civilizations, and demonstrating decisively that underestimation of humanity was an error with catastrophic consequences. And as the conflict entered its next phase, humans began a series of controlled demonstrations, not reckless attacks, but calculated displays of technological and tactical prowess that communicated capability without exposing full operational strength, reinforcing the narrative of a species that was not only capable of survival but of shaping the strategic landscape to its advantage. And in the aftermath of these demonstrations, alien fleets retreated to regroup, their councils fractured, communication networks compromised, and internal dissent magnified, while humans quietly consolidated gains, reinforced critical sectors, and prepared for the next series of operations with a level of coordination, adaptability, and foresight that alien civilizations could neither predict nor counter. And as these patterns of dominance continued, the perception of humanity shifted from curiosity to fear and respect, with independent factions across the galaxy reconsidering alliances, trade, and political engagement in anticipation of a future in which Earth dictated the rules of engagement. And while humans expanded influence and secured key positions, they maintained the principles that had guided every action: strategic patience, ethical restraint, calculated risk, and the continuous integration of intelligence, innovation, and operational excellence, creating a multilayered advantage that extended far beyond conventional measures of strength. And as alien commanders faced repeated failures, mounting casualties, and increasingly disorganized forces, the realization became unavoidable. The species they had presumed controllable was no longer merely defending itself. It was orchestrating a level of influence, coordination, and dominance that left no room for arrogance, miscalculation, or assumption. And as humans continued to integrate lessons learned, refine strategies, and expand a network of allies and influence, the galaxy collectively began to acknowledge an inconvenient but undeniable truth. Underestimating humanity was not merely a mistake. It was a fatal miscalculation whose consequences would echo across star systems, civilizations, and generations, and the species once dismissed, marginalized, and underestimated had risen with a combination of ingenuity, discipline, and resilience so profound that the balance of power, the dynamics of interstellar politics, and the assumptions of every civilization would have to be recalibrated to account for a force that had proven, without question, that it could not be controlled, manipulated, or ignored. With the alien coalition fractured, fleets in disarray, and previously neutral factions realigning to recognize humanity's influence, the galaxy stood on the precipice of a new order, one dictated not by arrogance, conquest, or reckless expansion, but by the species that had been underestimated for millennia, and humans, fully aware of the precarious balance they now commanded, acted with a combination of authority, restraint, and foresight that would define their emerging reputation for generations. And from Earth's orbital command hubs to hidden bases in distant systems, councils of scientists, military strategists, diplomats, and engineers coordinated operations that reinforced the message. Humanity would act decisively where necessary, protect where appropriate, and negotiate where possible, blending strength and diplomacy into a seamless exercise of influence that left no question about their capabilities. And as fleets moved to secure critical systems, prevent retaliation, and stabilize vulnerable colonies, alien leadership began to recognize the irreversible reality of their failure, that every assumption, every calculation, every strategy built upon underestimating humans had been catastrophically flawed, and the species they thought controllable had not only survived but reshaped the conflict on their own terms, turning adversity into strategic advantage, chaos into calculated opportunity, and threat into a demonstration of restraint and ethical discipline that further distinguished humanity from the civilizations they confronted, and as humans extended their reach, liberated oppressed populations, and integrated former adversaries into a network of alliances, the galaxy slowly recalibrated its perception of power, realizing that technological superiority alone was insufficient, that adaptability, creativity, foresight, and the willingness to act decisively under uncertainty were the true measures of strength and humanity, guided by centuries of overcoming adversity on a turbulent planet, exemplified these traits in ways that no alien mind had anticipated, and as alien commanders debated surrender, retreat, or desperate counterattacks, their deliberations were hampered by distrust, confusion, and fear, as humans had systematically exploited rigidity and arrogance to create both operational advantage and psychological dominance. And from the smallest liberated outpost to the most contested sector, the narrative was clear: humanity would not be bullied, dismissed, or controlled, and the galaxy's power structures, once taken for granted, were now subject to the strategic brilliance, ethical discipline, and relentless ingenuity of a species previously ignored. And even as humans consolidated their gains, they carefully avoided unnecessary destruction, demonstrating that true dominance lay not in conquest alone, but in the ability to secure survival, protect allies, and command influence across systems without provoking chaos that could undermine long-term objectives. And as months passed, the alien coalition disintegrated, rival factions sought alignment with humanity, and interstellar councils acknowledged a shift in power, establishing formal communications, treaties, and trade agreements with a recognition that Earth now set terms rather than obeying them. And through this transition, humans maintained a careful balance of transparency and strategic ambiguity, revealing enough strength to command respect while withholding full capability to preserve advantage. And in doing so, they demonstrated a principle that had guided their species for centuries: mastery over circumstance through intellect, adaptability, and moral consideration, proving that underestimation was the gravest error a civilization could commit, and that the consequences of such arrogance would echo for generations. As humans quietly continued to expand their presence, protect the vulnerable, and prepare for a future in which the galaxy would respect, fear, and collaborate with a species that had finally shown its true capabilities. And as alien fleets faded from contested systems, alliances shifted, and civilizations recalibrated their strategies, the galaxy collectively understood a fundamental truth. The species they had presumed weak, controllable, or inconsequential was neither, and in the span of a few short years, humanity had redefined interstellar norms, rewritten the assumptions of power, and ensured that no future civilization would dare underestimate Earth again, and in the quiet aftermath of conflict, as human fleets maintained defensive postures, researchers expanded knowledge, and diplomats negotiated stability, the message was unambiguous and enduring, a legacy of triumph, strategy, and ethical mastery. The species that had once been underestimated had risen, and the galaxy would never forget that the planet they had presumed controllable was, in reality, unstoppable, resilient, and entirely capable of shaping its own destiny. And in the vast expanse of stars, systems, and civilizations, humanity's presence became synonymous with ingenuity, strength, and the unassailable truth that those who dismiss a species at their own peril are doomed to witness the consequences firsthand. And as the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, Earth stood not merely as a planet, but as a symbol of a species that had proven, beyond question, that it could endure, innovate, and prevail against all odds, forever rewriting the narrative of what it meant to be human among the stars.